Lucas adjusted his backpack over his shoulders while still holding his mother's hand, who was typing something on her cell phone with her other hand. They walked through the organized chaos of the bus terminal, a place filled with hurried voices, quick footsteps, and the occasional metallic sound of suitcase wheels against the rough floor. Lucas observed the different people passing by. Families gathered together, solitary travelers, friends laughing. Despite the vibrant energy around him, he felt an eagerness to return home, to his room, his books, his space. "Lucas, stay close to me, it's very crowded here," his mother warned, briefly looking up before returning to the illuminated screen of her phone. "I'm here, Mom," Lucas automatically responded, his eyes still scanning the crowd. That's when he saw him. An elderly man, wearing a faded coat and trousers that seemed too large for him, was standing a few steps away near a waiting bench. The man appeared distressed, his eyes scanning the ground as if he had lost something valuable. His trembling fingers delved into the pockets of his coat, frantically and futilely rummaging through them. Lucas's curiosity was replaced by concern. He squeezed his mother's hand, drawing her attention. "Mom, look at that gentleman over there. He seems to be in trouble." His mother lifted her gaze, following Lucas's look. "Oh yes, poor man. I hope he finds what he's looking for." But Lucas couldn't look away. Something about the man's expression, the mix of confusion and despair, drew him in. "Mom, can I go see if he needs help?" She hesitated, assessing the situation, but then nodded. "All right, but be quick. Our bus will be arriving soon." With his heart beating a bit faster, Lucas let go of his mother's hand and approached the elderly man. "Hello, sir," he began, trying to keep his voice steady and friendly. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The man looked up, clearly surprised to be approached. "Oh, hello there, young man. Yes, I'm trying to find my bus pass. I was sure it was in my pocket, but now I can't find it anywhere." Lucas watched the distress grow on the man's face. "What does it look like? I can help look for it." "It's just a regular piece of paper, but it's very important to me. It's supposed to take me to my brother. I haven't seen him in many years," the man explained, his voice trembling. "Let's find that pass then," Lucas said with determination, beginning to search around the bench where the man was sitting. After a few tense minutes rummaging through the area with no success, Lucas felt the weight of disappointment. But then, an idea emerged. He touched his pocket, feeling the few notes he had saved to buy something on the return trip. He hesitated for a moment, but the decision was already made in his heart. "Sir," Lucas began, turning to the man with a small smile, "I didn't find your pass, but I can buy a ticket for you. It's my gift." The man's eyes widened, initially incredulous, then filled with gratitude. "You would do that? For me? But why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Lucas replied simply, already pulling him toward the ticket counter. As they walked, he felt the man's hand squeeze his in gratitude, a small gesture, but loaded with meaning. This act of kindness, small yet powerful, would trigger a series of events that would change Lucas's life in ways he could never have imagined. The story was just beginning, and every step towards the ticket counter seemed like a prelude to something grand and unexpected. Lucas, with his heart pounding a mix of nervousness and compassion, gently pulled Mr. Albert by the arm toward the ticket counter. As they walked, the elderly man looked at Lucas with an expression of astonishment mixed with deep gratitude. "But why are you doing this, young man?" asked Mr. Albert, his voice trembling, reflecting his emotional state. "It just seems like the right thing to do," Lucas replied sincerely, looking directly into the man's eyes. "I don't like to see someone in trouble if I can help." When they reached the counter, Lucas pulled out his wallet, counting the bills he had saved for snacks during the trip. As he handed the money to the attendant, Mr. Albert continued to murmur words of thanks, clearly touched by the boy's selfless gesture. "Which destination for you, sir?" asked the attendant, looking over the counter at Mr. Albert, who seemed a bit lost, still absorbing the young man's kindness. "It's to Clarksville, please," replied Mr. Albert, regaining his composure. "I'm going to visit my brother. I haven't seen him in over a decade." Lucas watched as the attendant printed the ticket and handed it to Mr. Albert, who held it as if it were a treasure. "You have a heart of gold, boy." I don't know how to thank you," said Mr. Albert, his voice choked with emotion. "No need to thank me," Lucas smiled. "Just have a good trip and enjoy the reunion with your brother." As they said goodbye, Lucas felt a warmth in his chest, knowing he had done something good, something real. He watched as Mr. Albert walked away, his stride now a bit more firm, his head held up with new vigor. Lucas returned to where his mother was waiting, still absorbed in her phone. "Everything all right, Lucas? What happened?" asked his mother, finally looking up from her cell phone as she saw her son approaching. "I just helped someone in need," Lucas replied, trying to keep the moment simple, though inside, he felt that something significant had happened. "You've always been a good boy," said his mother, a gentle smile crossing her face as she pulled him into a tight hug. "Come on, our bus should be arriving soon." They headed to the boarding platform, but Lucas still looked back at the spot where Mr. Albert had disappeared into the crowd. He knew, somehow, that small action might mean much more than just buying a ticket. He felt a kind of promise in the air, a prelude to new stories that were about to unfold. As they waited for the bus, Lucas could barely contain his curiosity about what the future held, not just for Mr. Albert, but for himself as well. What had begun as a simple act of kindness was about to transform his life in ways he could never have imagined. The sun had barely started to light the sky when a soft sound of tires rolling on the asphalt caught Lucas's attention. He peered out the living room window, curiosity overtaking his still sleepy gaze. A black car, impeccably polished with mirrored windows, had parked right in front of his modest home. A man dressed in an elegant suit stepped out of the vehicle and adjusted the watch on his wrist while looking towards the front door. "Mom, Grandma, come see this," Lucas called out, his voice mixing excitement and a touch of uncertainty. His mother, Mrs. Thompson, and his grandmother, Helena, joined him at the window. "Who is that, and what is a car like that doing here?" asked Mrs. Thompson, frowning as she observed. It wasn't long before the elegant man, later identified as Mr. Mitchell, rang the doorbell. Lucas hurried to open the door, closely followed by his mother and grandmother. "Good morning," Mr. Mitchell began with a warm smile. "My name is George Mitchell. I am here at the request of Mr. Albert. He would like to invite Lucas and his grandmother to spend the day at his house. He has something special to show you." Surprise was evident on everyone's faces. Mrs. Thompson, cautious, intervened. "That's very kind, but why would Mr. Albert want to see us? And how did he know where we live?" Mr. Mitchell looked at Lucas, who began to recount the encounter at the bus terminal and how he had helped Mr. Albert with the ticket. Mr. Albert was deeply touched by Lucas's gesture and mentioned he wanted to do something in return. He also expressed great interest in getting to know him better, given Lucas's generosity. Helena, who had a proud expression on her face, placed her hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Well, this seems like an unexpected adventure, and a good opportunity to show Lucas how good deeds are rewarded." After a brief moment of hesitation, Mrs. Thompson agreed. "All right, Lucas, go get ready. And you, Helena, I think this is a golden chance for you as well." Soon, Lucas and Helena were ready. They followed Mr. Mitchell to the car, where he opened the door for them with an elegant gesture. As the car smoothly glided down the road, Lucas and Helena exchanged looks of excitement and nervousness. "So, Mr. Mitchell, what exactly does Mr. Albert do?" "This car is really impressive," commented Helena, trying to break the ice. Mr. Mitchell smiled through the rear-view mirror. "Mr. Albert is a man of many talents and resources. He retired a few years ago after a successful career in the financial sector. Now, he spends most of his time involved in charity work and collecting art. The conversation flowed naturally after that, and the initial nervousness of Lucas and Helena turned into growing anticipation. As they approached Mr. Albert's grand mansion, both could not help but be awed by the vast property stretching before them, filled with well-kept gardens and the imposing structure of the house in the background. Upon entering the immense entrance hall, they were greeted by Mr. Albert himself, who awaited with a broad smile and open arms. "Welcome to my humble abode," he exclaimed, his voice full of warmth and enthusiasm. As the front door swung open, Lucas and Helena were immediately enveloped by the warmth of a crackling fireplace in the distance and the soft sound of classical music floating through the air. Mr. Albert, with a smile radiating a mix of gratitude and joy, extended his arms in a warm welcome. "Lucas, Helena, what a pleasure to have you in my home. Come, let me show you around and share with you the paths my life has taken." Mr. Albert guided them down a hallway adorned with heavy velvet curtains and paintings of landscapes and portraits that seemed to capture more than a century of stories. Each step unveiled a part of the life of the man whom Lucas had helped in such a simple way. "This one is one of my favorites," said Mr. Albert, stopping in front of a portrait of a young man who bore a strong resemblance to him, though with much darker hair. "It was taken when I was about your age, Lucas. This photo reminds me of a time when life was as simple as playing in the fields behind my parents' house." Lucas, fascinated, stepped closer to examine the portrait. "Have you always lived here, Mr. Albert?" "Oh no, my young friend. I grew up in a small town in the countryside, very different from this place. I only came here after many years, when life had given me more than I ever imagined I would have." Mr. Albert's voice carried a tone of nostalgia mixed with a hint of pride. Continuing the tour, they passed through an immense library, with shelves that reached the ceiling, filled with leather-bound books. "I spent many nights here," commented Mr. Albert, "absorbed in the pages of stories and knowledge from all around the world. I think it's here that I really learned the value of empathy and generosity." Helena, following every detail with admiration, commented, "It's truly impressive, Mr. Albert. Lucas has always been a boy who loves to read. I think he would feel right at home in this place." "And that's exactly how I want you to feel while you're here," replied Mr. Albert with a gracious gesture, leading them towards a spacious living room where a blazing fireplace invited them to pause. Lucas couldn't help feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the splendor, but the kindness and simplicity in Mr. Albert's words made him feel welcomed and at ease. "Mr. Albert, what made you want to live in such a big house?" the boy asked, curious about the story behind so much luxury. Mr. Albert smiled, looking around as if seeing the place for the first time. "Well, Lucas, when you live a life as long as mine, sometimes you accumulate more than you need. I was fortunate to be successful in my business, and with that came the opportunity to build a place where I could offer comfort not just for myself, but for others. It's a place for gatherings, for sharing, not just living." They settled into soft sofas, and Mr. Albert continued to share stories, each illuminating a different chapter of his life, weaving together the experiences that shaped his worldview and the power of the kindness that Lucas had shown. "You see, Lucas," he said, concluding a particularly moving tale, "every act of kindness, no matter how small, echoes through time and space. And your act, though small to you, was a great gift to me." The conversation flowed naturally, and soon the afternoon began to give way to twilight. Helena glanced at the clock, mindful that time was passing but feeling grateful for this moment of sharing. The meeting was unfolding into an experience of learning and mutual recognition of shared humanity, setting the stage for the revelations that would come in the next chapter of their lives. As the light of dusk began to filter through the large windows of the living room, Mr. Albert suggested they move to the dining room, where an elegantly set table awaited them. "Let's continue our conversation with some tea and snacks I've prepared for us," he said, guiding Lucas and Helena with a gentle nod. As they settled around the table, the atmosphere became even more intimate and welcoming. The aroma of herbal tea gently mingled with the scent of freshly baked cakes, creating an almost magical environment. Mr. Albert served the tea with precision and care that spoke of many years of practice, and then sat down, looking at Lucas with a thoughtful expression. "Lucas, today, seeing you so determined to help a stranger, you reminded me of my own youth. I too was helped by someone, in ways that changed the course of my life," began Mr. Albert, his voice low and laden with emotion. "And I always promised that if I had the chance, I would do the same for another. Today, that chance has arrived." Lucas, still absorbing the setting and Mr. Albert's words, felt a mix of surprise and humility. I just wanted to help, Mr. Albert. I never imagined it would lead to something so significant." "But it always does, my young friend," Mr. Albert replied, smiling as he passed a plate of biscuits to Helena. "Small actions can have large repercussions. And that's why I would like to offer you a scholarship, to ensure that your future education provides you with all the opportunities you deserve." Helena, hearing the offer, placed her hand over her mouth, visibly moved. "This is incredibly generous, Mr. Albert. Lucas, did you hear that? What a wonderful opportunity." Lucas, still trying to grasp the magnitude of the gesture, looked at Mr. Albert with wide eyes. "But why me? I haven't done anything extraordinary." "You did everything that was necessary," affirmed Mr. Albert firmly. "You showed kindness without expecting anything in return. And believe me, that is a quality rarer than you might think." The three continued to talk as the tea gave way to dusk outside. Mr. Albert shared more about his own life experiences, how hardships and serendipitous encounters had shaped him. Lucas listened intently, each word and story adding layers to his understanding of the world and the impact an individual could have. "So, what do you say, Lucas? Are you ready to accept this responsibility, to learn, grow, and perhaps one day, pass on the same kind of kindness you demonstrated today?" Mr. Albert asked, offering Lucas not just financial support but a challenge to live a life of impact and meaning. Lucas, feeling a weight of responsibility but also a clear spark of excitement, nodded. "Yes, Mr. Albert, I accept. And I will do my best to honor this trust you're placing in me." Helena placed her hand over Lucas's, her face radiating pride. "I'm so proud of you, Lucas. Let's make this opportunity the beginning of something truly great." With Helena's last words echoing in the room, the evening fell completely. The conversation had woven a network of possibilities, dreams, and plans for the future, all anchored by the promise made that tranquil afternoon. And as the night progressed, Lucas knew that the next day would bring new horizons and challenges, each an opportunity to grow and make a difference. The next morning brought with it an air of novelty and promise that Lucas had never before felt. As he ate his breakfast, he reflected on Mr. Albert's words and the weight of responsibility he now felt. But it was a weight he carried with pride and determination. "Mom, do you think there are other things I could do to help people?" "Like Mr. Albert said, small actions can make a big difference," Lucas asked, his gaze lost in thoughts about his new role in the world. Mrs. Thompson, noticing the change in her son, smiled affectionately. "Lucas, I think there are many ways to help. Maybe you can start small, right here in our community. Remember Mrs. Marjorie, our neighbor? She always needs help with her garden." "That's true," agreed Lucas, excited about the idea of being able to do something concrete and immediate. "I could start there. Maybe I can learn more about gardening too." In the days that followed, Lucas not only helped Mrs. Marjorie with garden chores, but also volunteered at the local library to organize books and read stories to younger children on weekends. Each new activity gave him more confidence and made him feel as though he was truly making a difference. "Lucas, you have become a very special young man," Mrs. Marjorie said one day as she watched Lucas carefully arrange the gardening tools. "You bring so much life and energy wherever you go. I am so grateful for your help." "I should be thanking you, Mrs. Marjorie. I'm learning a lot from you. And I'm happy to be able to help," Lucas replied, his face lit up with a sincere smile. While working at the library, Lucas met a variety of people, each with their own story. These encounters taught him about the diversity of human experience and reinforced his belief in the importance of empathy and mutual support. One day, while organizing some children's literature books, Lucas was approached by Mr. Hansen, the head librarian. "Lucas, I've been watching your work here and heard about your interest in expanding your horizons. Would you like to help organize a reading club for children? I think it would be an excellent way for you to apply your passion and still contribute to the community." Lucas, surprised and moved by the proposal, accepted without hesitation. "I would love to, Mr. Hansen. I think I could learn a lot from organizing a reading club. And it would be amazing to help other children love books as much as I do." With each new experience, Lucas felt more connected to his community and more confident in his role as an agent of change. He began to understand that, even though he was young, he had much to offer and that each act of kindness, no matter how small, could inspire others and create a wave of positivity. As Lucas explored these new horizons, he was not only helping himself and others grow, but also laying the groundwork for bigger challenges that lay ahead, challenges that would take him further than he had ever imagined. As summer transitioned into autumn, the mentorship sessions between Lucas and Mr. Albert became an essential part of the boys' routine. One afternoon, as they walked through the expansive garden of Mr. Albert's mansion, which was beginning to display the vibrant colors of the season, the conversation deepened. "Lucas, do you see how each tree, each plant here has its own story, its own place in the ecosystem?" Mr. Albert began, pointing to the leaves gently falling around them. "Just like the plants, every person has their story, their unique value. That's why empathy is so crucial." Lucas, watching a leaf slowly descend to the ground, responded thoughtfully, "It's like trying to understand the journey of the leaf, not just where it falls." "Exactly," Mr. Albert smiled, clearly pleased. "And, as your mentor, it is my role to help you understand these journeys, not just in books but in real life too." They sat down on a garden bench, and Mr. Albert pulled an old worn book from his leather bag. "This is one of my favorites. It's called The Travels of Marco Polo. It's an exploration not just of unknown lands but also of the cultures and people he encountered. I think you'll like it." Lucas accepted the book reverently, flipping through the yellowed pages. "It looks amazing, Mr. Albert. What do you think I should look for while I read?" "Look for the curiosity and respect that Marco Polo had for the new and the unknown. Try to see how you can apply that same curiosity and respect in your own life." In the following months, Lucas delved into the book, each chapter a new adventure that fed his intellect and soul. He and Mr. Albert met regularly to discuss not only the book, but also the life lessons that could be drawn from each story. During one of their mentorship sessions, while discussing a particularly inspiring chapter about the generosity Marco Polo encountered in a small village in Persia, Mr. Albert said, "You see, Lucas, each act of kindness that Marco Polo experienced and recorded taught him more about human kindness than any material wealth could." Lucas, absorbing every word, nodded. "I'm beginning to see how my actions, even small ones, can influence others. It's like I'm on my own journey, learning and growing." "Yes, you are on a journey, Lucas. And every person you help, every book you read, and every conversation we have adds to your understanding of the world." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, the conversation between mentor and mentee became more reflective. Lucas felt that each meeting with Mr. Albert not only expanded his mind, but also strengthened his character. When the night finally enveloped the garden with its blanket of silence, Lucas and Mr. Albert agreed to start a new book the following week. The young man was eager for the next chapter of his education, feeling more prepared than ever for the challenges and discoveries that lay ahead. Lucas could barely contain his excitement as he arrived at Mr. Albert's mansion, a travel bag in hand and a heart full of expectations. Mr. Albert greeted him with a broad smile and a warm hug, making him feel immediately welcome. "Lucas, my young friend, this week will be one of great learning and discovery," announced Mr. Albert, as he guided Lucas through the richly decorated corridors of the mansion to the room that would be his during the stay. I have prepared a series of meetings and activities that I believe will be enriching." The room assigned to Lucas was spacious and inviting, with a window that offered a stunning view of the well-kept gardens of the estate. After settling in, Lucas was invited to join Mr. Albert in the main hall, where other guests were already beginning to gather for dinner. In the hall, Lucas was introduced to several people, all longtime friends and associates of Mr. Albert. Among them was Mr. Roberts, a man of erect posture and insightful gaze who stood out for his gentle manner and calm voice, laden with wisdom. "Lucas, let me introduce you to Mr. Roberts, a tireless traveler and a storyteller without equal," said Mr. Albert, with a gleam of admiration in his eyes. "It's a pleasure to meet a young man so spoken of by Albert," said Mr. Roberts, extending his hand for a handshake. "I've heard that you possess a curious spirit and a generous heart, two qualities I greatly appreciate." During dinner, the conversation flowed between delicious dishes and fine wine. Mr. Roberts shared one of his many stories, this time about an expedition to the Himalayas. Lucas listened, fascinated, as the man described breathtaking landscapes and encounters with cultures so different from his own. "And that's how I learned the importance of respecting local customs and traditional wisdom," concluded Mr. Roberts, raising his glass in a toast to the diversity of the world. Inspired, Lucas asked, "Mr. Roberts, what would you say is the most important thing you've learned from your travels?" "Ah, Lucas," Mr. Roberts replied with a wise smile, "I've learned that, no matter how much we travel and how many exotic places we visit, the true journey is the one that happens within us. Every person we meet and every experience we undergo shapes us and teaches us more about who we are and what we can become." The following days were filled with seminars, walks through the gardens, and long nightly conversations in Mr. Albert's library, where old books and maps of distant worlds served as the backdrop for discussions on philosophy, history, and the endless possibilities of the human future. Lucas felt as if each day at the mansion was a chapter from an exciting book he never wanted to end. Each conversation, each new idea shared added layers to his understanding of the world and solidified his determination to be part of something greater than himself. As the week came to an end, Lucas knew that the lessons learned and the friendships formed during those days would be treasures he would carry with him for the rest of his life. And as he prepared for the next stage of his journey, he was more ready than ever to face the challenges and seize the opportunities that would surely come. The week at Mr. Albert's mansion continued to be a period of profound personal growth for Lucas. Each day brought new stories, each filled with wisdom and vital teachings that touched the young man's heart and mind. Mr. Albert's library became the setting for many of these revelations, where the air was always imbued with the scent of old books and polished wood. On a particularly rainy afternoon, as the rain gently drummed against the glass windows, Mr. Roberts shared a story that captured everyone's attention in the room. "It was during my travels in Africa," he began, his calm and measured voice filling the space, "in a small village hidden among the vast savannas, that I learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life." Lucas, comfortably seated in an armchair with a mug of hot tea in his hands, leaned forward, absorbed by the narrative. Mr. Roberts continued, "The village was facing a severe drought, and the water shortage threatened not just the lives of the people but also the animals and plants. It was there that I met a woman named Amara. Despite the hardships, she maintained an incredibly positive disposition. How did she manage to keep hope in such a desperate situation?" Lucas asked, genuinely curious. Mr. Roberts smiled slightly before responding. "Amara taught me that resilience does not come from the absence of despair, but from the ability to face adversity with courage. She led the village's efforts to collect and conserve water, teaching everyone, especially the children, the importance of caring for their environment, even under the harshest conditions." "That's incredible," murmured Lucas, reflecting on the strength and determination of that distant woman. "And you know, Lucas," Mr. Roberts added, "what Amara and the villagers showed is that kindness manifests in many forms, including perseverance and care for the community." The conversation unfolded into a discussion about how kindness and resilience can transform adversities into opportunities to strengthen community bonds and inspire positive changes. Lucas listened intently, each story and lesson etching itself into his memory. In the days that followed, Lucas had the opportunity to speak with other guests of Mr. Albert, each bringing their own unique experiences and perspectives on life. There were historians, philanthropists, artists, and scientists, and each contributed to the rich tapestry of knowledge that Lucas was eagerly absorbing. On the night before his departure, as everyone gathered in the grand dining room for one last meal together, Lucas expressed his gratitude. "I want to thank everyone here," he said, his voice steady despite the evident emotion. "Each of you has taught me something valuable that I will carry with me for the rest of my life." Mr. Albert, seated at the head of the table, raised his glass in a toast to Lucas, who has shown us that even the young have much to teach the more experienced. May your journey always be illuminated by curiosity and the desire to make a difference. With a heart full of stories and lessons, Lucas prepared to return to his everyday life, knowing that each encounter and conversation that week had shaped his character and broadened his worldview in ways he could never have imagined. As his stay came to an end, he was ready for the new chapter that awaited him, armed with new knowledge and a renewed sense of purpose. The morning was just beginning to lighten when Lucas, inspired by the conversations and teachings at Mr. Albert's mansion, decided to apply what he had learned to his own community. Filled with new ideas and a renewed sense of purpose, he met with Mr. Albert to discuss an action plan. "Mr. Albert, I was thinking about how I could apply the knowledge I've gained here," began Lucas, as they walked through the mansion's gardens, the morning dew still glistening on the grass. "I want to organize something to help the people in my town." Mr. Albert, with an encouraging smile, nodded. "That sounds wonderful, Lucas. What do you have in mind?" "I'd like to start with a food drive. There are many families who are facing difficulties, especially now," explained Lucas, his voice full of determination. "An excellent idea," responded Mr. Albert. "Organizing a community event requires planning and coordination, but I'm confident you can do it. Let's start by setting a goal, finding a location, and mobilizing volunteers." Lucas took meticulous notes while Mr. Albert outlined the basic steps for organizing the event. "And don't forget about publicity. It's vital to ensure people know about the event so they can participate or contribute," added Mr. Albert. In the following days, Lucas plunged into organizing the event. He contacted the local community center, which was more than happy to offer space for the food drive. Lucas created posters and flyers, distributing them in schools, local stores, and posting on community social media. "Lucas, how is the event planning going?" asked his mother, Mrs. Thompson, as she saw him spreading the last of the flyers. "It's going well. I think we've managed to get people's attention. I hope many will come and contribute," replied Lucas, a glint of hope in his eyes. On the day of the event, Lucas was nervous but excited. As people began to arrive, bringing with them non-perishable food items, his nervousness was replaced by a feeling of satisfaction and pride. The community center quickly filled with residents eager to help, and the food collection exceeded all expectations. "Lucas, you did an exceptional job," said the director of the community center, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile. "Your initiative really brought our community closer together." Encouraged by the success of the event, Lucas wasted no time planning the next one. He wanted to keep the momentum going and continue making a difference. Each project Lucas initiated strengthened his ability to lead, organize, and most importantly, understand the needs of his community. He began to see each challenge as an opportunity to grow and learn more about how he could positively contribute to the world around him. As autumn gave way to winter, and with several successful initiatives under his leadership, Lucas was increasingly convinced that his path would always be linked to community service and social impact. He knew that, although still young, the foundations he was building now would be crucial for the future challenges he was eager to face. In the heart of winter, as the community bundled up against the biting cold, an unexpected crisis arose. A severe winter storm toppled several old trees in the city's central park, damaging the playground that was heavily used by neighborhood children. News of the damage quickly spread, and the community was disheartened, especially the children who saw the park as a haven for play and exploration. Lucas, upon learning of the incident through an urgent message on the community WhatsApp group, felt an immediate responsibility to act. Recalling Mr. Albert's teachings on leadership and initiative, he did not hesitate. He quickly donned his thickest coat, grabbed a notepad and pen, and headed to the park to assess the damage personally. Arriving there, Lucas found several residents already gathered, discussing what could be done. The scene was disheartening. Branches scattered everywhere, broken swings, and the main slide was practically unusable. "We need to do something," Lucas said to those present, his voice steady despite the chilly wind. "We can organize a community cleanup. With everyone working together, we can bring our park back to life." His proposal was met with enthusiasm mixed with a dose of dismay, given the magnitude of the challenge. "Lucas, it's a good idea, but do you think we can really manage it?" asked Mrs. Marlene, one of the community's longest-standing residents. "I know we can," Lucas replied confidently. "Let's talk to everyone in the community, ask for help, and we can also use social media to reach more people. Plus, we can contact local businesses to see if they can donate materials or tools." Inspired by Lucas's determination, the group began to formulate a plan. Lucas took the lead, organizing teams and assigning tasks. Over the following days, he went door to door, accompanied by friends and neighbors, promoting the project and gathering volunteers. The day of the cleanup arrived. Despite the persistent cold, the community came together with a spirit of cooperation that warmed everyone's hearts. Lucas oversaw the work, helping where necessary and ensuring each volunteer knew what to do. "Lucas, look how many people came to help!" exclaimed his friend, Tomas, as he tossed another pile of branches onto the discard stack. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Lucas responded, a proud smile on his face. When people come together, no challenge is too great. By the end of the day, the park was clean and necessary repairs had been made. Children were already running and playing on the newly fixed swings, their laughter filling the air and rewarding everyone for their collective effort. As he watched the scene, Lucas felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had not only learned a valuable lesson about the ability to overcome obstacles, but also experienced the power of uniting a community around a common cause. With the success of this project, he was even more motivated to tackle other challenges, knowing that with the help of his community, he could achieve any goal. After the success of the park cleanup, news of Lucas's actions and his ability to mobilize the community quickly spread. It wasn't long before the city council decided to formally recognize his efforts. A special ceremony was organized in his honor, planned to be held at the very park he had helped to restore. On the day of the ceremony, the park looked particularly beautiful, adorned with streamers and balloons, and the atmosphere was electric with the excitement of local residents and the media that had come to cover the event. Lucas, dressed in his best attire, felt a mix of nervousness and pride as he walked arm in arm with his mother, Mrs. Thompson, and his grandmother, Helena. "Lucas, you can't imagine how proud we are of you," whispered Helena, squeezing her grandson's arm. "Seeing all these people here because of you, you've really done something wonderful." Mrs. Thompson smiled, her eyes gleaming with emotion. "You've become a wonderful example, Lucas. Thank you for teaching us the true meaning of community and care." As they arrived at the designated spot for the ceremony, they were greeted by the city's mayor, who made a point to personally congratulate Lucas. "Lucas, your initiative and leadership have brought new life to this park and to our community. It's young people like you who give us hope for the future," said the mayor, shaking Lucas's hand enthusiastically. The ceremony began with the national anthem, followed by speeches from various important community figures, including leaders of local organizations, teachers, and representatives from volunteer groups. Each had something positive to say about Lucas and the impact of his actions. Finally, it was time for the mayor to present Lucas with a certificate of recognition. "On behalf of the city of City Name, it is with great pleasure and pride that I present this certificate of recognition for your exceptional dedication and service to our community," announced the mayor as he handed the certificate to Lucas. Lucas, holding the certificate in front of an applauding crowd, felt a surge of accomplishment. He took the microphone to make his speech, his hands shaking slightly with the adrenaline of the moment. "I just wanted to help our park, but it turned into so much more than that," began Lucas, his voice clear and steady. "This recognition isn't just for me, but for all of us as a community. Together, we've shown what we can achieve with cooperation and community spirit. Let's continue working together to make our city an even better place." The applause was thunderous, and many in the crowd were visibly moved. Lucas stepped down from the stage to hugs and congratulations, feeling more connected than ever to the people around him. As the ceremony came to an end and people began to disperse, Lucas, his mother, and his grandmother took a moment to contemplate the rejuvenated park. "Today was a big day, Lucas," said Mrs. Thompson, putting her arm around her son. "But I know there are many more big days still to come for you." Lucas smiled, looking out over the park he had helped save, now full of life and laughter. He knew this was just one of many journeys of discovery and learning that were still to come, and he was more than ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. The days following the recognition ceremony were a whirlwind for Lucas, filled with new opportunities and invitations to participate in various educational and community projects. Encouraged by the continuous support from Mr. Albert, Lucas decided to further expand his educational horizon, diving into areas that had until then been merely a passing interest. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Lucas found himself at Mr. Albert's house, surrounded by stacks of books on environmental science, a field that had begun to fascinate him following the park project. Mr. Albert, observing the young man's enthusiasm, suggested a new learning adventure. "Lucas, since you've shown such a great interest in our natural environment, how about we start a small gardening project? We can use a corner of my garden to test different cultivation and sustainability techniques," proposed Mr. Albert, as he served both of them green tea. Lucas, with a sparkle in his eyes, immediately accepted. "I would love to, Mr. Albert. I think learning by doing is the best way to truly understand these concepts." In the weekends that followed, Mr. Albert's garden transformed into an outdoor laboratory for Lucas. Together, they planted various plant species, experimenting with composting and water conservation techniques. Each session was a mix of hands-on work and theoretical discussions, where Mr. Albert shared his knowledge of ecology, and Lucas applied what he learned in real time. "You see, Lucas," Mr. Albert explained as he showed the young man how to properly prepare the soil for planting, "each type of plant has its specific needs. Just like people, they need the right environment to flourish." Lucas absorbed every word, every lesson with an almost palpable fervor. He documented every progress and setback in a field journal, which quickly became his treasure trove of practical knowledge. On one of those afternoons, as they observed the first sprouts from a row of tomato seedlings they had planted, Lucas reflected on his journey. "Mr. Albert, I never imagined that planting some tomatoes could teach me so much about patience and care." Mr. Albert chuckled softly. "Ah, Lucas, nature is our great teacher, and I am very glad to see how you embrace each lesson with such enthusiasm." Encouraged by the success of his efforts in the garden, Lucas began organizing small workshops for children in the community, teaching them about sustainability and the human impact on the natural environment. Each workshop ended with the children planting their own seedling, an experience many of them had never had before. "This is just the beginning, Lucas," said Mr. Albert during one of their gardening sessions, as he helped Lucas prepare the material for the next workshop. "You are building a solid foundation, not just for your future, but for the future of our community and, who knows, the world." As Lucas continued to explore and expand his knowledge, he was not only preparing for a bright future, but also inspiring those around him to become aware and take action. With each new discovery and each new skill acquired, he was increasingly equipped to face the challenges that the future held for him. As the end of the school year approached, anticipation around Lucas's elementary school graduation was growing both at school and at home. One quiet afternoon, Lucas sat at the kitchen table with his mother, Mrs. Thompson, and his grandmother, Helena, flipping through brochures of various high schools and discussing his options. "Lucas, have you thought more about which school you'd like to go to?" Mrs. Thompson asked, handing him another brochure from a school known for its excellent science programs. Lucas, looking thoughtfully at the material, replied, "I've been thinking a lot about it. I want a school that's not only strong academically, but also offers plenty of opportunities to continue my community projects." Helena, always ready to encourage her grandson's ambitions, smiled and added, "And what does Mr. Albert think about it? He must have some suggestions. He mentioned a school that has a special program for young community leaders. He thinks it would be perfect for me, considering everything I've been doing," explained Lucas, referring to his recent initiatives that had gained local recognition. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a message notification on Lucas's phone. It was Mr. Albert, sending a link to a recent article about a student from the school he had recommended, who had led a major environmental conservation project. "Look at this," Lucas said, showing the phone to his mother and grandmother. "It seems this school really supports students in their projects. This could be perfect for me." "That sounds wonderful, dear," Mrs. Thompson said, clearly relieved to see her son so enthusiastic about his educational future. "Let's schedule a visit to the school, so you can get a better feel for the environment and maybe even meet some of the teachers and students." In the following days, Lucas and his family visited the school recommended by Mr. Albert. He was immediately impressed with the modern facilities, the vibrant atmosphere of engagement and curiosity, and especially the focus on social and environmental responsibility. He spoke with several students who shared their experiences and projects, each displaying a passion and drive that echoed his own ideals. Back at Mr. Albert's house for a celebratory tea after the visit, Lucas was effervescent with new ideas and plans. "Mr. Albert, the school is amazing. They have science clubs and debate societies, and even a program where students can start their own community initiatives with full support from the school," he reported, almost breathless with excitement. "I'm very proud of you, Lucas," Mr. Albert responded, a gleam of approval in his eyes. "You're making the right choices, not just for your education but for your growth as a leader. Keep it up, and you will do great things." With Mr. Albert's encouragement and the support of his family, Lucas felt more prepared than ever for the challenges that awaited him. With an open mind and a heart full of aspirations, he was ready to take the next big step in his educational journey, armed with knowledge, experience, and an unparalleled support network. The school gymnasium was decorated with streamers and balloons in the school colors, transformed for the graduation ceremony. Parents, teachers, and students gathered in a buzz of excitement and nostalgia, while Lucas, in his graduation robe and cap, nervously adjusted his tie knot. His heart raced not just from the anticipation of the event, but also from the responsibility of delivering the graduation speech. Beside him, Mr. Albert, dressed in a flawless suit, offered a reassuring smile. "You're going to shine, Lucas," he murmured. "Remember to speak from the heart." "Thank you, Mr. Albert," Lucas replied, taking a deep breath to calm his nerves. "Without your guidance, I wouldn't be here today." The ceremony began with the presentation of diplomas, followed by musical performances by the students. Finally, it was Lucas's turn to speak. He stepped onto the stage, his hands slightly trembling as he held the microphone. Looking out over the sea of faces in the audience, Lucas found the encouraging glances of his mother and grandmother, which made him smile. "Good evening, everyone," Lucas began, his voice growing in confidence. "Today, as we celebrate our journey through elementary school and look to the future, I want to talk about two things very important to me: gratitude and dreams." Lucas paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "Each of us has a support network, people who have shaped us, challenged us, and encouraged us. I have many of those people to thank, but today, I want to highlight one in particular." He looked towards Mr. Albert, who smiled back proudly. "Mr. Albert taught me that small acts of kindness are not as small as they seem. They have the power to echo through the world, transforming not only those who receive but also those who give. Mr. Albert, your transformative kindness has changed my life, and for that, I am eternally grateful." The audience applauded, many with tears in their eyes, touched by the sincerity of his words. Lucas, feeling increasingly confident, spoke about his dreams for the future. But gratitude is not the end. It is just the beginning. It is the foundation upon which we build our dreams. "And my dreams are big," he declared, looking around the room. "I dream of a world where each person uses their position to make a difference, where compassion and empathy are the forces that drive society." Lucas concluded his speech with a call to action. So, as we move forward, I ask each of you to remember the power of small acts of kindness. Let's leave here not just as graduates but as ambassadors of change, armed with the ability and the responsibility to improve the world. The applause was deafening. Lucas stepped down from the stage to hugs and congratulations, feeling humble yet powerful, ready to embark on the next phase of his life with a clear vision of his role as a leader and inspirer. As the celebration continued, Lucas, Mr. Albert, his mother, and grandmother gathered together, sharing laughs and tears of joy. It was the end of a chapter in Lucas's life, but, as he well knew, every end is just the beginning of a new and exciting story.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.